times as one page of the newsletter that's going out tomorrow. Mrs. Pruitt, is there anything you'd like to add from our meetings with our working groups this week?
Sorry, I'm muted. We did start another subcommittee this week focused on professional development for our staff. As you are aware, we will be conducting 11 days prior to when the students start, focused on professional development and planning and other various operational needs uh, that need to occur. So that committee has begun, and we also have new building based committees that many of our school committee members are on, some parents are on it, and many staff. It's just the growing number of staff that are volunteering their time to do this is really just everyone really needs to be commended for the number of hours that they are putting in on their own time, to get this done and ensure that it is a safe opening for all students and staff.
I will add, one of the things we were able to fine tune this week with the administrators were the dates that students could elect to come back to in-person learning from remote. So let me just repeat, if a student is in-person learning, if they opt for in-person learning, which again starts for students with phase 3, which is the hybrid plan, they could potentially go to remote, for example, if they needed to quarantine for a particular period of time, if they were absent but not so ill that they couldn't learn remotely. That's an option. That is an enhanced option that we didn't have in the past, and students would miss school for things like that, and return to school. However, if they elect for the remote option, I hope it's clear that we have to plan very, very carefully to ensure the safety of everyone who's going to be coming into the building. That means it's imperative we know exactly how many people to expect every day, no more than that. Potentially less than that if anyone needs to stay home, but certainly no more than that. And for purposes of teacher planning, that's also critical in terms of having materials available, in terms of being able to space out desks appropriately. They may be using alternative spaces during the day, planning to do something outdoors, for example. They really need to know how many students they can expect every day. And so we discussed this with every building, with all of the administrators, and we settled on dates that were going to be the same for everyone. So if a parent elects to do remote learning for their child, which is perfectly fine, we are going to ask them, and this will also be in tomorrow's newsletter, we are going to ask them to make a decision. There will be 2 points during the school year where they can elect to go back to in-person learning. Now, again, that could be because of a change in their conditions at home, or for their childcare perhaps has changed, or maybe their child is ready to go back to school, or the metrics in town or in the country perhaps have changed for them. It really doesn't matter. Whatever reason compels a family to send their children back to school from remote, they will have 2 opportunities or windows within the school year to do that. The first is we would ask that by December 13th, people tell us if they would like their child to come back for the remainder of the school year. Their participation would start on January 2nd. So again, to make sure that the staff, the administration, the teachers are aware of exactly how many people are coming in and how they can make accommodations to mitigate the flow of students, perhaps the intake or dismissal procedures, how they're doing lunch, depending what grade it is, how the teacher is going to manage their classroom. We would ask them to make that decision by December 13th for the child to start in person January 2nd. The next opportunity that parents or families will have is we will ask them to decide by April 10th for a start date of April 27th. Again, to give the opportunity, both of those include a break. in time in a vacation that falls within that. So it gives the teacher to make alternative arrangements if necessary, perhaps switch a classroom if necessary, depending on how many students might be moving at a particular time. We just want to make sure that no one is caught unaware and that the school, as well as the teacher, has the ability to make alternative arrangements, and we can feel confident providing the same level of safety as we do with the number of students we're expecting at the beginning of the year. So again, that will be 2 opportunities for families to decide if they want to send their students back to in person. At any time, of course, if they are uncomfortable and want to move to remote, they can do that. So if on a Monday, a student comes into school, on Tuesday, the family decides they want them to be in remote learning, that's perfectly fine. But on Wednesday, they cannot decide to come back into school. They would need to look for the next window, one of those 2 pre-established windows. Does anyone have questions about that? Did you want to add something, Mrs. Pruitt?
Yeah, I just want to add that the other important thing to consider is when if we get an influx of families that are moving from remote back to in person, we may need to order materials. And that's why we're asking there be a few weeks in between of that planning time, because there's a possibility that more materials, more furniture may need to be ordered to accommodate the influx of students. So that's just
Like
important to
bus
know.
routes?
Right, and bus routes. So there's a lot of planning that needs to occur when a family chooses to go from remote to hybrid if they're not already accounted for within the hybrid model.
Sorry, Jen, did you have a question or a
Yeah,
comment?
I just want to clarify, just because your last comment on the, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that does not apply to students who are out for illness or quarantine. That's
Right.
applies only to
So it
children
will,
that
right.
have
For
made the
those
decision.
students, it will be on an individual basis. It will be determined when they're ready to come back into school.
Yep.
These are just for people who elect for remote learning. And so we're going to have them actually coded in our system as R. And then the in-person students who we're going to have coded differently.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on that?
I don't have a question on that. Going back to when you said waiting for the technology to come in and getting your own. But when the technology comes in, it's going to be loaded with the programs that the school uses. So at that point, the personal technology would be kind of outdated, right? Or not outdated, but you need the programming in the computer, right?
Right. We're going to ask that they use we're hoping that they're in time, and this is a moot point, but we're going to ask that they use the individual devices that we provide.
Okay.
And there are
Thank
very
you.
specific reasons, very compelling reasons that our educators really felt extremely strongly about. They gave us anecdotal information about difficulties they've had in the classroom. It may seem perfectly fine to a parent who hasn't seen it in process in the classroom, and I can totally understand that. But there have been problems in the classroom in terms of assisting the students or the teachers being able to fully control what the students are and are not doing in class and so forth. And so we're going to ask that they use the technology devices that we provide.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Jackie or Caroline, do you have any comments that you want to make right now? Okay, Chrissy, I know you have some questions, so
Yes.
go ahead.
So
And this pertains to this reopening,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
The first question is from Lauren Loomis, 4 Abbey Road. Where can the public access the DESI doc once it's posted?
Okay, so everything that we are completing is available on, excuse me, on the district website. So if anyone goes to, it's going to be in a lot of places, but this is the best place. If anyone goes to the district website, there is a red button, right? If you just scroll right in the center of the page, there's one that says COVID-19, where everybody could find our COVID-19 information from the spring. We've decided to keep that up because there are a lot of resources on there that are very useful. We feel some CDC information and so forth. And so we're going to leave that up. So we left that link up there, but we have added the link called School Reopening. And on that page, people can find a warehouse of all the information that's been distributed so far. They'll be able to find the plan, all the newsletters we've put out so far. There are a couple of websites that are extremely useful, the social emotional resources that our counseling staff and nurses have put out, a nursing page of medical information. As I said, our newsletters, letters that I've sent out, but also this plan will be there. So that's a longer answer than was necessary, but I think it's important for everybody to know that everything we put out is always going to be there. So when in doubt, just check the district website under the school reopening tab. And again, it's not along the top, it's a red button right in the center of the page. That people can just click on to get all of our school reopening information. And so the school reopening plan will be there. That's a great point, and I just want to highlight it because we're also going to be working on, it may be something I'm working on this weekend, depending when the plan itself is finished, but the FAQs are going to be updated as well. I strongly encourage everyone, even if you sat through, and commendations to you if you sat through the 4.5-hour presentation of the plan. As I said, there have been some updates, some details have been finalized and so forth that have been added to that. I would encourage everyone to really look through the plan again and also look through the FAQs again before making a decision for your family. You should be able to find all of the questions that have been asked will be answered. As I said, I may have to continue working on that on the weekend, but we are giving everyone until Wednesday to complete those. So please refer to those if you're not entirely sure about what it is you want to do. And we will assist you in any way to answer any lingering questions that you might have, but we are going to need those decision forms done by Wednesday, please.
The next question is from Liz Bornstein, 31 Walden Drive. Can you clarify whether leveling, if, for example, math, language, high school classes, will still happen with cohorts?
Yes, absolutely. Where appropriate, of course, in some areas we don't have leveling, some we do, and differentiation will happen as well within grades, wherever it applies. Teachers will still be able to differentiate. That is true of remote students as well as in person. I am not on social media myself, but I have been made aware of different comments that may have been less than accurate paraphrases, perhaps, of things that I've said. Please be aware. I would just maybe ask people to just reflect on their experiences in the Easton Public Schools. And this is going away from the question that was just asked, but I think it's important. If there is a concern about remote learning, I did say, and I do continue to say, it is not ever going to be the same as in-person learning. It isn't. It is not in person. However, our professionals are just that. They're fantastic professionals, and they're not going to neglect or be attentive differently to students based on the medium by which they are accessing the classroom. And I would ask anyone that is concerned about that to think about their experience in the Easton Public Schools. Have they ever had a teacher that was not attentive to their child, that they felt did not give their child individual attention, that did not care deeply for their child, that did not go out of their way to assist their child personally and academically? I think it would be hard to find such a teacher in Easton. My experience has been exactly the opposite. And that's not going to change just because they're working with the child through a computer as opposed to in the classroom. So please keep in mind that when there is an inference that a child might be neglected in some way, it is a negative inference toward our professionals. And I'm presuming good intent and presuming that it's not intended, but unless anybody has had an experience that our staff is not attentive to children, then that is a bit of a leap that would take place. They're not going to change who they are or how they serve children or how much they love children. And so I hope that among the many concerns people are dealing with right now, that would not be one of them.
I just want to add to that, many of our professionals are actually on some of these social media sites, and they're viewing what is being put out by people. I would say most, if not all, of our professionals have been working tirelessly this summer, and they don't have to be, and they are, to ensure the best education possible for your children. And I just ask that everyone really be careful on what they put on social media, because our teachers would do anything, our staff would do anything for your child. And they're reading this as well. And we want to keep our teachers and our staff members encouraged, because this is a very, very trying time for everyone. So I just wanted to say that. I hope that's okay. I'm not overstepping boundaries, but I think, I, as a mom myself, yes, I get very frustrated at times in my own situations. And I often see people turn to social media as a way to reference, and I have to remember I'm modeling behavior for my children. And so I just want to caution everybody on what is posted when there are so many professionals that are working so hard for your child. Thanks. So the next question is Ginger LeMay, King Arthur Road. Will the first day of school, September 17th, begin with cohort A?
Good question. What day of the week is that?
It's a Thursday, so it would be cohort B.
It's cohort B. Yeah. It goes by the day of the week. It's a great question. Goes by the day of the week. So cohort B would start on the 17th.
Yeah, and we'll have to look at the calendar if days get extended, if this model is extended for a period of time when there are Monday holidays, we will have to adjust a week. So, and potentially adjust a week. So we will keep you posted on that. Okay, Pam Booth, 35 Vineyard Place. I have heard that Easton was looking for temps to help test all the devices as they arrive. If that is still the case, and if so, who should be contacted?
We are looking, we're advertising for interns because we cannot hire positions with our grant money, and we have no money in our operational budget to hire anyone. So we are hiring interns, quote unquote subs, if you will. That will actually be extended into the school year, because after everyone is using devices, it's going to be really important that we're able to answer all of our help desk tickets as quickly as possible. And so we're going to have them troubleshooting those as well. Anyone who is interested in these positions can contact the Director of Technology, John Souza. His email is JSOUSA with the traditional suffix for the district. So jsouza at easton.k12.ma.us.
The next is a comment from Kelly Morton from 104 Gaslight Lane. She would just like us to know that the dates and times for notice from remote to hybrid, back to hybrid, is very reasonable. And Jenny Bastian from 43 Concerto Court. Will fully remote students be receiving materials, manipulatives, and any curriculum they may need to conduct their learning from home?
To conduct what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
They're
end.
learning from home, sorry.
Oh, yes, it depends on the grade level. There is an effort, grades up to grade 5. Teachers are putting together lists for students that are similar, and we have some participation from PTOs and PTAs to potentially assist us in purchasing those materials for students. And so as we learn about that, or when that's coming in, we will put out information of how that can be picked up. Also, it's important to note that, again, not related, but it's reminding me. So anybody that is eligible for free or reduced lunch services, that is going to elect for remote learning, there will also be an opportunity for those families to come and, similar to the grab and go in the summer, be able to pick up those meals for their children. So more information will come about that, but obviously we don't know how many students or who those students are yet. So we haven't put that together yet, but it is important for those families to know that even if they're remote, they're still eligible for those services.
Medji now on 94 Lincoln Street has 2 questions. Will new incoming students have any possibility to meet with teachers and staff ahead of 9/17 in person or remotely?
That's going to be up to the individual teachers, how they do that. They may do it by grade, they may do it individually, but our teachers are great about reaching out and introducing kids. They've got all little tricks and cute things. Some of them send things home and whatnot. But just like every other year, that's going to be up to the individual educator, and they will reach out in the way that is appropriate for their grade level, class, subject, so forth.
And her other question is, for the pods that people are developing, is this information public?
What information?
Pods that people are developing, that's not through the school system.
Oh, yeah. I don't know anything about those. I realize some people probably are creating pods, but that's totally independent of the school system. And so we will not be publishing that. I think that's what you're asking.
And that's it for right now.
Okay. And I think that might be all that I have. Again, I'm just going to encourage people. I understand that the turnaround time is quick and that getting the entire plan up is quick, but all of our deadlines from the state have been quick. So, we keep getting new information or information that has to be included or information that has to be changed, and we literally have a day to do it. So we're just pushing out information as we're being asked to change it. And so unfortunately that does create some tight timelines.
All right, anybody on the committee?
Sorry, we do have another question. Melissa Beery, 43 Rockland Street. Will online remote learners be a part of a cohort, please?
Online remote learners?
Fully remote learners.
Fully remote learners will be like an A-B. They're going to participate in classes while cohort A is in the classroom and while cohort B is in the classroom. So they're like a cohort A-B.
And then an anonymous just said, thank you for what you're doing with the resources you're provided.
Okay, thank you.
I don't typically read the anonymous ones, but.
Does anyone else on the school committee have a question? Okay, all set. All right, good. So the next thing is review policy EBCFA face coverings first reading. Dr. Cabral.
Okay, so I would like to just add some clarification to this item. I think there was a little bit of confusion because we were calling it the mask policy, but we did not mean mask, M-A-S-K. We meant mask, M-A-S-C. So the school committee here, the school committee members are part of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and that's called MASC. That's their acronym. And so MASC, the organization, came up with a face covering policy and emailed that to every school committee member in the state. It is then the responsibility of school committee members to bring it up to each other the only way they have, which is during an open meeting. And so at the last meeting, the chair put it on the agenda to let the other members of the committee know that there was a policy out there. Unanimously, if anybody was at the last meeting, unanimously they felt it was not a sufficient policy and wanted to review it and also ask school nurses and other professionals to take a look at it to make it a policy. So I think some people were confused that the school committee was reviewing a mask, M-A-S-K policy without input from other people. That is not the case. They were looking at what they were required to look at, which is an MASC, mask policy to see if they wanted anyone in the district to take a look at it and do anything with it. And they did reach out and they did ask people to take a look at it. And so I believe you are now working in conjunction with some professionals and you are going to make this a policy of the school committee. One thing I would remind people also is that a school committee policy and a procedure that's used in a district or guidelines are two very different things. A policy simply, it's very universal. You know, for example, there will be mask coverings worn during a pandemic kind of thing. It is very, it's more evergreen. It's not something that is redone all the time. And it's difficult, it's not difficult, but it's not a very easy thing to change like a guideline is. Guidelines are the things that we use in school that are very, very detailed and change based on information given to us on any particular day. Every policy that goes into a school committee binder or policy manual by regulation has to be read, it's called a reading, has to be read 2 times publicly. So this is the first one. And then it has to be voted on. This is a procedure that encompasses like 4 different school committee meetings and could take a couple of months. So our guidelines are always more detailed and will be different than what is actually in a policy, because if we want to change a guideline, we can just change it. If you wanted to change a school committee policy, you have to go through that very detailed procedure, and you may not be able to change it very quickly based on scientific evidence that maybe a particular mask is not efficient and needs to be changed. You don't want to wait 2 months to do that. So again, I think there was a little bit of confusion, people thinking that you were creating a mask, M-A-S-K policy without input, and that was going to be used as a specific guideline within the district. That is not what you're working on. You're working on a school committee policy that may have guidelines spun off of it that can be changed very easily at the school level by the appropriate medical professionals, excuse me. I hope that makes sense. Those were 2 important clarifications that I think were confusing to people. So now you have your first reading of the MASC face covering policy.
Okay, anybody want to comment on face coverings? Caroline?
I have a couple of preliminary comments. I think we probably do need to discuss this at some length. First of all, on the first clause, unfortunately, my printer's not working and I'm using my tiny little iPhone to try to read the document, but I've of course read it a few times. But the first clause, students grades 1 and below are exempt. I think we should, from wearing face coverings or masks, I think we should add something along the lines of, but are strongly encouraged to wear a face covering or something along those lines. I don't want it to just seem like, oh, you know, first graders don't need to wear masks. I mean, many young children, I see them all over town. I see them all over the country are wearing masks successfully. I know that it's more difficult for some children than others, but I think that we should not make it seem like just nobody grade 1 and below needs bother. I think that it's important for families to protect their own children and the children in their children's classes and their teachers to, if possible, teach their children how to use a mask, even if they're quite young. I know that I have referenced this before and that an N of 1 is completely invalid from a statistical standpoint, but my 2-year-old grandson wears a mask every time he goes out and he thinks it's cool. So I think that, you know, we can encourage younger children to wear face coverings. I know we can't mandate it, but we could, I think, encourage it. Just wondering what everybody else thinks about that, but I'll get to my second point first and then we can, it says there that exemptions would include while outside. I think that's a little broad. I don't think that just being outside provides, you know, just universal protection for people. And it says that children in PE are exempt. Fine, as long as they're about 12 feet apart. We do have some new information that says that the aerosol can go further, particularly if people are shouting or yelling, even outside than 6 feet. So if they're going to be without face coverings for PE, certainly inside, they should be 12 feet apart. If they're going to be without face coverings outside, they should also be quite well distanced. This is just based on my looking at the science that seems to, kind of be updated every day. Let's see. So I do think kids, even outside, should be further than 6 feet apart, but certainly once they start having PE inside, if that does occur at some point, I think they need to be, actually they're saying the aerosol can travel about 16 feet. So we need to be very cautious about saying that kids don't need to wear face coverings just because they're in PE or just because they're outside. So that's my more than 2 cents for now.
If you remember from the plan too, we did say that we were requiring everyone to wear a mask and that it was going to be, determined by the individual staff member working with students, whether or when they would take the masks off. We are finding that many students, even very young children, are tolerating the masks quite well, especially if they're able to find one that they like or is very comfortable for them. So that is how we have worded it in the plan itself too.
Yeah, but the sample policy though does say under first grade and under. So I was actually just referring to changes that I would like to see.
No, I know. I'm just validating.
Yeah. No, I know the plan does, and you're exactly right. To make it consistent with our own plan, we would need to do that anyway. That's a very good point.
Okay, I just want to add in that tomorrow on the newsletter, the nurses are also putting something out. So at the social emotional meeting on Wednesday, they asked that we not vote on this, which I said, we're just doing our first reading, but they have some things the nurses would like to add and fix in this policy. Jen, did you have a question?
Sure, I just wanted to reply to Caroline's second comment. So I think there's the clause right above that list that specifies when appropriate social distancing is enforced. So I think kind of getting to that nuance that Dr. Cabral mentioned between the broadness of a school committee policy versus the narrowness of guidelines within the district or within the schools. I think that's maybe where we can further define what appropriate social distancing is in those instances.
Jen, I love your comments every time. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That is much more of a guideline than, because that could again change tomorrow. Hey, the scientists may go to 26 feet tomorrow. I don't know. Yeah. But I hope not. But yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and it makes a lot of sense. In fact, several of those things could really be more guidelines than.
Yeah, and we could, just to clarify, we could maybe then just add in parentheses, after that clause, refer to specific guidelines.
That was what I was going to say, to refer back to our guidelines.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, if I could actually read this, I'd probably do better.
Right.
It's so teeny.
Do you think that, I'll ask Dr. Cabral, do you think that for the public, I should read this policy as it is right now, or should we wait until we get a final policy and then go from there?
That's up to you. That's entirely up to you.
Is this someplace where people could find it to look at?
Probably on the MASC website.
Yeah.
But it's just a first reading too, so you certainly have a lot more opportunity to discuss.
And the nurses, like I said, they are posting some information tomorrow on the newsletter, so we can sew that into this policy. Yeah,
that would be great.
So our next meeting we'll do a second reading.
I Sorry, I had one more. I kind of echoed Caroline's and Jen's comments on this. My other question was when they talk about the, I think the last sentence, the second to last paragraph is talking about when they're on buses. And it says, however, the district will supply disposable face coverings for individuals who arrive at a building or board school transportation without one. So my question was, when it comes to the busing, I know we were talking about having extra masks on the bus. Is that being supplied by the school district or by the bus company?
Both, depends on the vendor.
Okay. So maybe we just need to tweak that a little to just, I don't know,
Okay, something to think about, right?
Yeah, I think
Go ahead, Caroline.
this is more of a comment. I do think this policy, I think passing this as quickly as possible, certainly before kids are back in school, is critical. And one of the things that really jumped out at me from the sample policy that we were provided from Mass Association of School Committees, otherwise known as MASC, is that parents may not excuse their child from face mask requirements. I think that's important because, we were talking about social media earlier. I do see comments by parents that they're just going to tell their child they don't have to wear a mask. Well, they cannot excuse their child, and their child can be excluded from in-person school if they're not wearing masks unless there's a very specific documented medical reason or behavioral, but it has to be documented. So I think that it's really important to get that information out there as soon as possible because it's so critical that parents help their children get used to wearing masks for a few hours at a time. It turns out that for adults, at least, once they've been wearing a mask about an hour or so, their brain kind of switches off that irritated feeling. And for many adults, they almost forget they have the mask on after a while. So that's a good thing. And if that happens with, the younger people among us, that would be even better. But I know we're going to have mask breaks and so on, but it may turn out that it's less of a challenge than people expect it to be. But again, school committee policy is enforceable, and we need to emphasize that. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Chrissy, are there any comments or questions on the Q&A about this topic?
On this topic, there's a couple questions that I'll wait for public comment.
Okay.
But on this particular topic, there's one from Mejni now from 94 Lincoln Street. Will teachers and staff assist in encouraging wearing face coverings?
Yes, absolutely. We're asking parents to pitch in with that. In fact, the newsletters we have sent out already contain some videos and strategies, some fun ways that we can encourage student use. Teachers will be talking to students about decorating their masks, about fun ways to use them. We encourage parents to let students pick out fabrics or colors or maybe superheroes or something that is engaging for them, and certainly one that is comfortable. We've all learned that there are many different shapes and sizes and materials as long as they're safe. Some are safer than others, and our nurses are coming up with guidelines to choose masks that are more safe and reliable than others. As long as it falls into that category, then we encourage student choice. We all know just from being parents, even if you're not an educator, that if a student chooses it or thinks they have chosen it themselves, they're much more likely to participate in using it or to use it. So there are lots of games we can use. It's important that they see people wearing the mask. I have been encouraging people to get children used to wearing the mask. It's very effective. For example, if you tell children that they must wear their mask during screen time or television watching time, that is something that you can do that is an incentive, and they probably won't even notice they have it on if they're really embroiled in a game. So those are some strategies. Again, we have put more in the newsletters, seeing parents wearing masks, pointing out people wearing masks that they see on the street or on television. And certainly, regardless of the age of the child, explaining the purpose of the mask. There's child-friendly language for literally every grade level, and just helping them understand that they're helping their friends and neighbors, and it's a good way to keep them safe, and it keeps their friends safe. And again, seeing that everyone's doing it and pointing out that people are doing it. And again, they mimic what we do. So a person's attitude about wearing a mask is extremely, extremely important. If we're positive about wearing them and we wear them and we don't refuse wearing them in certain places, then it's much more likely our children will follow suit.
Go ahead, Caroline.
I'm not sure whether this would fit into guidelines or into the policy itself, because it's pretty important. It's a little, well, it's not off topic at all. It's very much on topic. So many people now, I see them literally everywhere on, as speaking of television, I mean, I'm not out much, but you know, I see them looking out the window, are wearing their mask just over their mouth and are keeping their noses free. First of all, the nasal pharynx is where most of the virus resides. So that is not protecting other people whatsoever. It's also reducing protection for the person wearing the face covering. So I don't know if we, you know, I think the nurses will probably, when they talk about, you know, what materials and what, you know, how to wear masks, that they'll include that. But I think I have no idea where it, you know, people got the idea that all they had to do was cover their mouth. But obviously the nose is probably more important, given that that's where most of the virus lies. So I hope that we can at least include that in guidelines and maybe even as part of the policy.
It's in the policy. It's in
oh,
the
is it? I didn't see this. Is I can't.
Yeah.
I was like
It
using
says,
the.
Yeah, it says a
Yeah.
face covering that covers the nose and mouth must be worn.
I wonder if we could put that in bold or just put nose in bold. So anyway, thank you. Sorry I missed that, but I just, as I said, I've been struggling to read the policy on since it's a long story, but my devices are all rebelling against me these days.
Thank you. The other thing, maybe, and these are probably, I don't want to make them negative. I'm not doing that, but I was a middle school teacher. So let's go with that. If you have Betty comes in every day without her mask, but then you give her one for the day and then she loses it and she gets on the bus, she needs another one. I mean, can we reach out to parents and say, you know, take the mask that Betty has, keep it clean, and, you know, she can come to school on her cohort days with a mask. Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hoping, I don't know if that's part of the policy or if it's just a guideline that about wearing masks. And the other thing is, you were talking about, you know, cute fabrics and this and that, and not to put seeds in anybody's heads, but, you know, being respectful of the mask covering without being inflammatory. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is something that, so I taught high school. So this is something that we are very used to, and we already have policies in place for this kind of thing, whether it's headgear or clothing and so forth. So this is not new to us, and we can certainly handle it.
I know I've seen that before in a policy, but I didn't know if it would be something, and we can talk about this next week too, but just to make sure that all the bases are covered as far as face coverings.
Yeah, Nancy, it is actually in the policy that principals can reach out to parents if students are non-compliant, and that's a form of non-compliance if they literally have to be provided with a new mask twice a day. So, so they would definitely, the parents would have to be involved. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Next up, COVID update, Dr. Cabral.
So that is a standing item, and unless there are any questions, I think our school reopening plans pretty much covers that. We do know, and I would encourage people to look at the governor's new graphic that's going out every week, every Wednesday, I believe. That there you are. That's going to be available online where they're color coding. I wouldn't say everybody necessarily agrees with it, but that's okay because, as I've said before, we're using a lot of these guidelines from whether it's the state, the governor, or DESE as the floor and not the ceiling. So we will certainly have more conservative measures in place. But of course, Easton has been and remains a green town. And that is a very important or very helpful thing for people to look at. It is one of many matrices that we will use. We certainly will not rely upon that alone. One of many matrices that we will use in conjunction with our local Board of Health so that we have the most local and most up-to-date information possible in determining whether we are going to switch phases within our plan or switch plans altogether.
I just wanted to add to that, the commissioner highlighted to us on a conference call this week that if, for example, our town does turn a different color using the matrix, it's important to narrow down even more specifically on what the data is telling us. So for example, if there is a local university in, our town, not naming that it would be Stonehill, but what if there is a contraction there, but it's maintained on campus? That might not necessarily mean that the Easton Public Schools would have to close down because of that. So,
or a nursing home or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that information because that actually helped me a lot when I was looking at the different colors of towns. It's just one piece of data, but there's so much more data to look at.
Are there any other questions about anything going on? Sorry, muted.
There is, but for public comment, we'll wait for public comment.
Okay. Any school committee questions?
I was just saying, we just want COVID to go away. We're done with it. So done. I can't wait for the day that we don't have to have.
You are the chair and you professed it, so it must happen.
I'll wave my magic wand. All right. Budget update, Dr. Cabral.
Okay, so Director of Finance, Marilyn Gordon, is here, and we discussed at our last school committee meeting. I asked her to prepare information specifically about because of course we don't have any changes in the FY21 information. So I asked her to prepare information specifically about grant funding that we've received and that we have been spending, to give you an idea of what that is, an idea of how much is still available to us, how that is dwindling quickly. And so she's here, and I'm going to ask her to share that information with you and then answer any questions you might have about it. Marilyn?
Hello.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi. Okay. Sorry. I don't do this that often, so.
You're doing great.
Is that good? Can you see
Yep.
it?
It's a little small, but we can see it.
I can't get it to go any bigger. Okay, so basically we have 4 sources of funding for our COVID expenses, and the first is the 102 COVID relief grant, which is the $225 per student, $785,000. And we've basically been using that for all of our technology needs. So there's the list of the things that we're buying with that: webcams, hotspots, Chromebooks, Wi-Fi managers, and security filtering. And there's $20,279.68 left there. The next is the ESSER 113 grant, which is $234,794. Those are our have been designated for our curriculum remote needs. And I don't know if Chrissy wants to talk about any of the items that we've purchased here and the things that are, there are some things that aren't purchased that are just earmarked at this point. Did you want to jump in on any of those, Chrissy?
Sure. So these are some of the things that we've identified that we are having to purchase due to the restrictions within the classrooms, as well as anything that we're purchasing in response to COVID. So for example, the Committee for Children, you'll see, you approved that, school committee approved that purchase for our new K-5 social emotional learning curriculum, which is second step. So that's one example. There's other things that we are needing to, Lexia, for example, is the company was very smart. They offered it free in the spring to everyone. And then we all got hooked and saw what a great resource it was. So we are able to purchase it with this funding for this year. We're not sure if this will be sustainable in the years to come. In fact, we met with the company and informed them of that as well. So they are providing a lot of professional development around this tool, which will be great. And then what's important to note too is that our platforms PK to 2 will be Seesaw. So Seesaw is the platform that teachers will use to communicate assignments and any announcements to families. And in grades 3 through 12, we will be using Google Classroom. So Seesaw has some free features. However, if we are looking for additional supports that Seesaw can offer, there is additional cost. So that's where we are purchasing the for-cost version of Seesaw. And then we have some supports for music, our music department, since they are being recommended by the state to conduct music remotely. Our music department has been fantastic at trying to really adapt their instruction accordingly, and also putting aside some money for substitutes and also the technology.
This is the one grant that has a little bit of an extended time period. This one goes to, I believe, September of 2022, is it? The rest of them all end in December of this year.
And both of those grants are grants that came directly to the school department, as well as, so that next grant, the 117-118 technology grant, we did explain that we put in for that grant about $400,000 worth of technology equipment. We have received information about that, but we cannot discuss it yet. It is embargoed by the state until they make their own announcement. But what we're looking to do is to take, you can see we are at 0 for the ESSER grant. We would take technology from that to put into the technology grant so that we have ESSER money for substitutes primarily. But we can't discuss that yet. If we do, we've been told it could jeopardize receipt of that money. So certainly we're not going to talk about it until they do whatever they need to do, which is like announce it or whatever they need to do. So shortly, hopefully we should be able to discuss what we might be receiving in the technology grant. So that's why it doesn't say anything just yet. And then that last one, I'll let Marilyn continue, but that's the one that the town received that did not come directly to the school department. So that is for all town services. And we applied to the town for reimbursement on that. Marilyn?
Right, so this is the town, is all the town departments, including the school department, are charging off of our supplies to this account. And anything that is FEMA eligible, we will basically, we get 75% reimbursement. It's something that immediately stops the spread. So like masks and just health, PPE type things, those are what is eligible. And it basically kind of extends this 2.2 million. So I did at the end here, so these are all, I don't know, I mean, it's virus guards, sanitizer, soap, thermometers, wipes. A lot of this, some of these things are on back order. And then we did get the signage in. We're doing our HVAC stuff here with this grant.
So a couple of concerns about grant funds is that you can see there's not a heck of a lot left. And as Marilyn noted, most of it expires in December. And a lot of our needs are things that we can't purchase right now. We've already purchased the PPE and the disinfectants and so forth. What we're seeing coming down the line are things like substitute nurses, the technology interns to help with all of the remote and online learning, substitute custodians to provide more cleaning as necessary in the buildings, substitute teachers for when people are out of the building, or to provide extra supervision in places that we're finding it's necessary. So those are things that you can't pre-spend or encumber. And so we have a concern about not only things ending in December, but also grant money running out. So there is talk of a over $200 billion fourth stimulus package that is being discussed at the federal level. That it's the one that we've been discussing is mostly contingent upon us having in-person learning when we return to school. We are really hoping that that comes through, because that's going to be critical for us, and certainly after December, but definitely with our human resource needs like substitutes and overtime, particularly nursing and custodians.
And I did put at the end here how much money the rest of the town has spent so far. Unlike us, the town side doesn't do purchase orders like we do. So I don't know what they have planned, what's coming for them. And also the unemployment is always, we actually have not received our first unemployment. The town has not received an unemployment bill yet. It's coming shortly. They did just get a heads up that it is on its way, but it will be the first unemployment bill that the town has received since the shutdown. So I have no idea how much that is. I just plugged a number in there.
Yeah, so this, it's very difficult to project how long this money is going to last. The town has been asking us for a budget and how much we anticipate using. That's extremely difficult for us, though, because as I've explained, we've had engineering firms come through and do a very thorough analysis of all our ventilation systems. There's no way to predict how much we would have had to spend on that. So we are getting prices for making sure those are perfectly safe. But 2 months ago, I couldn't have said how much that would have been, how many substitutes we're going to need, how many extra nursing subs we're going to need. I can't project what those expenses are. And so it's very difficult to budget for something like that.
That's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Hold on. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? I can't see you, so you have to just start talking.
Nancy?
Caroline.
This is not a question. I just want to really point out that Marilyn has been facilitating the Finance and Personnel Committee, and she has been so thorough and so helpful in terms of really making everything quite clear to us. I mean, when it's possible to do so. As she just mentioned, we don't always have the actual numbers that we need or the information, but I really just want to commend Marilyn. She clearly puts a lot of work into each meeting before the meeting begins. So I just wanted to mention that. It's not a question.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment or a question? Just start speaking.
We do have a question in the chat, in the Q&A regarding this.
Go ahead.
From Lauren Loomis for Abbey Road. I don't think this has been addressed and or asked. understanding the CARES money is a grant and one-time allocation, is the one-to-one tech program something the districts will likely continue year to year?
That is a great question. It is not something that we had planned because we don't have the ability to sustain that long term. So we have no idea if that's going to continue. It depends on future budgets, because these are one-time expenses and only because of the emergency. So we may find that that's not something that can continue, because anytime you have a procurement plan, anytime you have technology, you have to have a procurement plan of maintenance to continue replacing those at certain intervals, and also having the staff and the infrastructure to keep it going. So that's a great question. No, we're only doing it right now because it's an emergency situation and we have the capacity to do it, but there is absolutely no guarantee that we can continue that maintenance and procurement going forward. That we'll have to see that based year by year.
I have a question for Marilyn on that food service. Is that just because we did a lot of the grab and go and
we paid all of our staff complete, their full,
right?
And
they were working
school staff, not the Whitson staff, but
okay,
did pay them their full pay since the closure.
Okay. And we weren't collecting lunch money from students, so that typically defrays that cost.
And I also would like to make a comment. You were just talking about the grant that may be coming to us, and one of its ransom features is having kids in school. I just want people to know that we voted to go hybrid because we have information from Board of Health, our administrators, people that have been working together. And on these committees, if you could be on there and see what people are talking about and doing. I was very uplifted today anyway, but even last week. But I don't want people to think we're throwing kids back into school just so we can get 100% of the grant. That is not what's happening. We would love to have 100% of the grant, but we're going to take whatever we can get and we're going to use it correctly. And the students and the faculty's safety, everybody's safety in the school is the most important thing. Okay, I'm done. Anybody else?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, Chrissy, public comment.
Okay. From Pauline Finney, 25 Coughlin Road, Dr. Cabral has referred to fully remote learners as both cohort R and cohort AB. Please clarify.
Okay, cohort R in our school plan is actually a plan. It's the district plan. Those are not our remote learners. It's not cohort R, it's phase R. Phase R is, phase R in the hybrid plan is when we close down schools. So that's not the same as a student electing to go remote. Phase R is when we get to a point, for whatever reason, that we deem it is not safe for anyone to be in the buildings, and we close down schools and everyone is learning remotely. That's what phase R is, so that's different. It's probably not accurate to call remote learners AB because really cohort AB is really the kids that are going to be attending in cohort A and attending in cohort B in person, because we do have some high needs learners that will be identified who are going to be doing that. So I guess we don't really have a name for people who elect remote learning except remote learning. But the phase R, and so that's an important distinction. Thank you for bringing that up. Phase R in the hybrid plan is if we need to pivot to remote learning for everyone. That's when every building is shut down and people are all learning from home. Like in the spring, except a very, very different experience, because the spring was not learning new information. It was mandated by the state that we were not to teach new information. We had very strict guidelines. It's very different than right now. So again, in the spirit of grace on social media, I would again compel people to stop saying teachers provided, I'm sorry, quote unquote crap, or teachers did a terrible job. They were mandated by the state not to provide particular information, not to give new information, focus on power standards, not to do synchronous learning. They had a lot of hindrances to doing what they could potentially have done. And so please keep that in mind. That is very different than what we're doing right now and what we're allowed to do right now at the beginning of school.
Michelle Casey, 15 Spooner Street. She actually comments right underneath her question. I am unsure if this is a question that you can answer. So her question is, where does our teachers union stand on participating in the hybrid plan? Do they have to vote to agree to come back and teach in-person learning in this model under these new working conditions? And is this vote a majority? There's a lot on the news about teachers unions and the potential that some unions will not agree to the new working conditions in an in-person or hybrid model and therefore will not agree to teach in person. Is this a concern for Easton?
Okay, so we actually have 6 units that we work with, not just the teachers unit, but we've been working with the teachers unit since before we even put our learning plans together. So we have met with the leadership of our largest unit, which actually is it's Unit A, which is our teachers and other professional staff, guidance counselors, nurses, crisis counselors, so on. It also they also represent paraprofessionals, and they also represent Unit B, which are some administrators in the district that are part of a unit. And we have been working extremely well. We have asked for their input every step of the way. What has to happen is the school committee needs to choose a plan. And the school committee did choose a plan, and it is being submitted to the state, and so far has been accepted by the state. The units do not vote on the plan. Certainly any unit can vote on anything to give information to their leadership that's helpful, but they don't actually vote on the plan. What we do is called impact bargaining. So we don't negotiate the plan, we impact bargain. That means that we meet with units and say, what are potential impacts that this plan will have on your working conditions, and how can we mitigate any of those impacts? And so we have started that, and we have some good faith conversations going on. We have all the same goals. We want our staff to be successful. We want them to be healthy. We want them to be happy. And so we are listening to anything that they feel might impact what they're doing and trying to mitigate the impact. But the plan is the plan, and the plan is moving forward. And I have expectations that we'll be able to mitigate any impact. But if not, they certainly have avenues that they can take to pursue that. But so far, I believe that they've been extremely communicative. We appreciate everything that they've shared with us. We've tried to incorporate all of that. We have union members on every single one of our working groups. Just as a higher level comment, I would say I've always encouraged staff, parents, and so forth that when you're looking at issues that are more they're statewide issues or even national issues, I always say to staff, read that very carefully and then find out what Easton is doing specifically, because we very often veer from a lot of those things. So yes, there are talks and there are some very contentious things happening in other districts, but we are not seeing that in Easton because there are just some districts, for whatever reason, I'm not faulting whether it's management or labor, I have no idea why, but they've elected not to work together, or they haven't had even teacher input or staff input or parent input on any of the plans. Districts just choose to do things differently. I'm sure they have their reasons for doing that doesn't really work for us. And so we have had a very inclusive process all along. I don't believe that anyone who is interested in what's happening does not know what's happening. We have been completely transparent and clear the whole way. Every single element of the plan so far has been recommended to us, or suggested, or changed, or augmented, or made better by the participants on the committees. So I can't say anything's perfect, of course, but we're as close to being the most effective we can, I think, because we do take the perceptions of all the people that we work with into consideration. We believe that it's very important to be inclusive, and we have been this whole time. So I think the short answer is there isn't actually a vote. The vote that takes place is school committee, and that took place at the last meeting. So we are moving forward the plan. The bargaining that happens is called impact bargaining, and we're doing that right now.
Okay. Nicole Dennison, 3 Fall Lane. What will be done to ensure that a child who is unable to wear a mask does not pose additional risks to their classmates?
So that's really going to depend on where they are. They may be in a program where they are by themselves or with only a couple of students. Where we're starting, even in the largest class we're going to have, there's going to be 6-foot social distancing. So we may increase the distancing, for example, between that student and others. We have some plexiglass dividers. I don't want to always say plexiglass because some of them are different materials, but on that idea, dividers or things where people can easily see and communicate through them, we can make use of those. We can make use of other PPE. We have things like shields, and it really depends on the situation, but certainly the professionals are going to make sure that everyone is properly protected, and so they're going to utilize what's at their disposal, whether that is increasing distance or enhanced PPE or moving to a different area, or the physical structure like the plexiglass. They'll have many options that will they can choose from to help them depending on their situation.
Christine Flynn, 45 Scotchdam Road. Will we have the opportunity to switch from remote to in-person if the phases, hybrid to remote to hybrid to full, etc., change in addition to the 2 dates mentioned?
So I'm trying to think of an example of that. So
if we go from hybrid to fully in person and it's not on one of those dates, would a parent be able to have their child change from fully remote to go in person?
Phase 4, yes. Phase 5 is in person with no restrictions. So no. And then if we went to a full remote, no, because there would be no in-person option. So really the only time I would say is if we move from phase 3 to phase 4. It actually wouldn't apply any other time. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, otherwise it's just those 2 times.
When we get to phase 5, there will probably be no remote option.
Right, that's what I mean.
There's no restrictions anymore.
Right, so it's
secure and COVID has disappeared.
The same thing as if we go full remote. So I think the only time that would apply is if we go from phase 3 to phase 4. And I believe, yes, we could reasonably do that, but I would have to wait till see what's happening in phase 4 first.
Jessica Dubin, 65 Wedgewood Drive. When will teacher assignments be announced for EMS and OA?
That we can't do that until we have the parent choice forms. or parent decision forms. And that is what is being sent out tomorrow, collected Wednesday. So the sooner people turn those in, the better. If we are missing any, we're going to have to track down those families. So that's going to slow things down. So we're really hoping to have, we had 73% response participation last time. We need 100% response. So it's really, really going to slow things down if the administrators need to reach out to 28% of our students' families. So I would say that the sooner people turn in their information, the sooner we can turn that around. We're looking to do that as soon as possible, because obviously teachers want to know that too. We want to send out that information. So it's just highly dependent on when people respond.
Kelly Jackson, 5 Christopher Drive. What is considered high needs? What if you don't want your child attending 4 days?
So high needs is detailed in the plan, so you can take a look at it in a narrative form, but there are several things that may qualify for high needs. For example, a student who is part of one of our special needs programs, like our foundations program, our potentially our therapeutic learning center, our TLC program, and our skills program. Also, students who are in a particular level of English language proficiency. There are some students who have achievement gap issues. Those students would be identified. Some students of a lower economic status who have not had the advantage of certain, tutoring services or things like that will be determined by their academic competency. So, and any therapeutic services that are very difficult to provide online, like speech therapy or occupational therapy. If you do not want your child to attend 4 days, it depends. If they have an IEP, for example, where they're really going to need those services, we would need to have a conversation about that. We're certainly not just going to force people randomly to be there. If your school is suggesting that your child is there for that time, there's a very good reason for that, and they are going to be able to explain that to you in ways that they feel that being there is really going to be of great benefit to your child. So this is just not any particular child for an undocumented reason. There's going to be some data that is going to be behind why they're making this recommendation that this child needs extra in-person services. And so if your child is, it's probable that you already know if your child is in a high needs category, but if not, I would encourage you to listen to the information and the evidence provided by staff before you make a decision of whether you want your child to participate or not, because there's going to be some, as I said, some data to back up the need for that.
Michelle Casey, who had asked question previously, said, thank you. A great job by all. I feel confident in all of these plans. Thank you. Carly Hudson, 427 Bay Road. Is there a service plan for students with high needs if we don't feel comfortable returning in person?
Yes, we are going to provide those services remotely. Again, to the best of our ability. It's again challenging to do occupational therapy remotely, for example, but they are going to provide those services remotely. They will provide those in the afternoons, and on Wednesdays, they're just going to do it remotely, but that's going to be the time frame.
And that's all the questions we have at this moment. Nancy, you're muted.
I'm going to make a pillow. You're muted. Okay. Superintendent notes.
I'm all set.
Assistant superintendent notes.
You know me. No, I just have an actual statement to say. In 1 week from today, my grandfather will be turning 107, and he is a survivor of the Spanish flu, the pandemic of 1917. And when this pandemic started, he reminded me, and he's from his experience, he said, Chrissy, we are writing history. Be forgiving, be empathetic, understand people's anxiety, and support them the best that you can. Due to our current state in Massachusetts, we are able to provide options for families. And families will choose the best that they can, that they will choose what is best for them. I want you to know that we support you. We support any decision that you make for your family. And I also want to thank you for consistently supporting us. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much, everyone. This has been a very, very trying few months, and we would not be able to be where we are today if this wasn't for our community in Easton. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy, and happy birthday to your grandfather. How exciting.
I know, I have to mention him. He's famous.
School committee notes. Caroline, you're first.
Well, first of all, Chrissy, I also want to echo Nancy. Happy birthday to your grandfather. Maybe I shouldn't say this, and I always say to myself, when someone says that, they probably shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway. I'm afraid he might have been listening to a news program or some other press conference or something like that, because the Spanish flu was actually 1918. And, but the 1917 date has been repeatedly, and I mean repeatedly, put out there by the top administration of the country. So people that are listening to those press conferences now think the Spanish flu was 1917, but it did not exist before 1918. So your poor grandfather fell victim to misinformation.
No, he actually didn't state. He is a survivor. He was alive in 1917 also. So it doesn't. He did contract the Spanish flu and is a survivor.
Well, oh yes, that's the important part. But I was just kind of
the advice, not to me. Now I'm sharing with you. So I'm a victim of.
You're a victim of watching those press conferences. That's it. Well, see, your grandfather is one smart guy.
My grandfather would be very mad at me right now. So thank you for correcting me, Karen.
Well, you did okay. I did want to first of all thank my colleagues here. I know Michelle hit traffic and was really anxious to be here too, but everybody has been so thoughtful and put in so much work, and really it's just been wonderful working with all of you. And of course, I'm including big time Chrissy and Leisha. And I did want to clarify something that Dr. Cabral said, which is that it is true that we voted on a plan, and anyone who watched the meeting knows that it was an agonizing process for us. But we don't actually put together the plans that are options. We have the school committee chooses, in our case, I think we chose very wisely, a superintendent. We are part of the process of choosing an assistant superintendent. We're very fortunate to have very smart, very hardworking, really thoughtful leadership. But it's our leadership that puts together the options for us to vote on. Now, in the case of this school committee right now, we do have two professional educators, one retired, who's our wonderful chair, and the other is a teacher in another district. But in most cases, school committee members are not professional educators, and certainly 3 of our members are not. We were all trained and educated in other professions. So I think, there's sort of this information out there that maybe we should have done more research. We do a lot of research. Maybe we should have, listened to other opinions. We do listen to a lot of opinions, but most of all, we rely on our professional educators who, certainly Leisha and Chrissy and their whole teams. And so I did want to make it clear that our role is not to actually put together the educational programs and the plans in this case for reopening, because we don't have that expertise. I mean, certainly we can contribute, and we do, and we are involved, but I think that we did, now I'm using we as in the broader sense. I think our district did really well in choosing a hybrid plan. I know that there has been pushback, but even Governor Baker said that anyone in the green zone should consider reopening entirely, but at the very least, at a minimum, hybrid. And a number of us attended the Mass Association of School Committee and Mass Association of School Superintendent Zoom earlier this week. And the point was made that it's so critical for children to make a connection with teachers if they possibly can, and with their classmates. And the hybrid model does offer that opportunity, at least for a short period, even if we end up, to use everyone's new favorite word, pivoting and have to go remote. I think that even a few weeks, giving children those opportunities to connect with teachers and with their classmates is so important. So I think that, and certainly what Governor Baker and, in his news conference earlier, but also in that Zoom meeting that we attended with, I feel the need to say Mass Association of School Committees, just so I don't keep saying Mass. But they really emphasize the importance of that personal connection. So I just wanted to mention that. Anyway, I'm done. Thanks.
And thank you. And I was going to talk about the MASC meeting. Commissioner Riley was on. It was very informative. People from all over the state. So I think Easton's looking very good at this point. And the other thing is, these subgroups that are going on and these Zoom meetings happening everywhere. I can't even tell you how dedicated these people are, that, everybody from Dr. Cabral, Chrissy, guidance counselors, adjustment counselors, nurses, technology people, and 1,000, well, it seems like 1,000 teachers, but hundreds of teachers. So everybody's done a really good job. And just before Jackie and Jen, our next meeting will be next Thursday. Is that right, ladies? Next Thursday, okay? Yep. And if anybody has any agenda items, please send them to me. Okay, Jackie, you're up.
Thank you. So I just like to echo what has been said by my colleagues here. It's been really a privilege to be able to work on these reopening committees with our administrators and our teachers and staff. It's been the amount of time and energy and effort everyone has put in, the thoughtfulness, the creativity of the ideas, the collaboration. It's been really wonderful to see that and to be able to be a part of it. We are removed from that most of the time, but I can't thank you enough for letting us be involved in this process. And I wanted to just kind of tag on a little bit to what Caroline said. This was obviously a difficult decision for us. We trust our administrators and our teachers that helped come up with these plans. And it wasn't just them. We're working with our nurses and our Board of Health and our town officials to really try to come up with plans that serve all of our children. Our children have various needs throughout the district, and it's our responsibility to do what's best for all of our kids. And although people out there may not know all of the different situations for our children, we don't know it either. We can't because of the privacy laws, but our administrators do, and they work with these families and they see these children and they see what their needs are. And with the hybrid plan, I really do believe we're doing the best we can under the circumstances for all of our children. And this is stressful and frustrating for all of us, but we are working hard with everyone that we can to put the best plans in place for our kids. And we'll continue to monitor all of our health data. That's our first priority. So I just want people to realize that there's a lot of thought and effort that went into coming up with these plans. And we really do believe with this that we're doing the best for all of our kids. So thank you.
Jen?
So We can't add to that, Jackie. So I agree with everything you and Caroline and Nancy's comments from earlier. So I do have to add in that there is a special education town hall that is in the process of being scheduled. So I'm in the special ed English language learner committee, and that's one of those really extraordinary groups that just has an amazing cross section of participants. The meetings tend to run very long. We're on for most weeks about 2 hours because there's so much going on, and so many considerations. But it's time very, very well spent. So one of the items that came up this week again was an interest in having another town hall with Teresa Skinner for the special education families. So special ed families, please be on the lookout for an announcement on that once the schedule for that is finalized. So it'll be sometime in the next couple of weeks. And another idea that's being explored is a broader meeting or session with a counselor, either maybe somebody from the district or outside, to talk about some issues more broadly with how to handle uncertainty in a time like this, how to what sort of this a broad range of normal reactions to abnormal events. And so just an opportunity to hear from a counseling professional. For the meeting intent would be for parents, if we're able to get it scheduled, so that we know that what we're feeling is normal, and that can help, that can be reassuring, and then also some things to look out for as the school year begins with children. So just want to share that is something that's being thought of, and hopefully will be able to be scheduled and announced to the district within the next few weeks as well.
Thank you. Caroline, you have another comment. Do it. Go
yes,
ahead.
I do. I did forget to mention this. One of the things that came out in that meeting that most of us attended, Commissioner Riley was there, and he did say that no decision has been made yet about sports, which sports, how they'll be set up. And also he specifically said that it was essentially a rumor that students who were in remote learning situations would not be able to participate in sports because they had not made a decision about that yet. So I know that there have been quite a few questions on social media about the whole sports issue, and basically neither MIAA nor the state have made clear-cut decisions about those matters yet. So I just wanted to mention that for the rest of the public.
Actually,
darn, did something happen since Monday? Darn it. Okay, you got me back.
Yeah, actually it just came out today from the state. And we are waiting. We received that notification right before this. We are waiting for the DESE and MIAA to release more guidance, but they are classifying particular sports as in different levels of risk.
Yeah,
and,
he said he was going to do that, but I didn't know it had come out.
Yeah, and provide recommendations. So I'll forward that to all of you.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Hey, good timing. I'm
And
glad.
just to clarify, I'm not going to dispute the commissioner in any way. I will just say that in a conversation that Chrissy and I both had with him directly, he twice said it was unlikely that remote students would be able to play sports. And that was what I communicated. And Chrissy can contradict that if she'd like. She was there.
That is true. That I wrote it down word for word as he said that.
Now,
I totally believe
I'm not disagreeing with him because he didn't say the plan was that they wouldn't. He just said it was unlikely. And I thought it was very important for people to know that. And I think
that's exactly what you said. Right.
I think that maybe this, the fact that it hasn't been decided yet is the result of people maybe contacting them, which is why I told people what was said. So just to make it clear, it was not a rumor. It was something that was said, And maybe people turn that into a rumor that it was definite, but it certainly was never said here that it was definite. But he did definitely say it was unlikely. And so
I
that is
totally believe you, because I know the others who participated could verify this. He seemed a little uncomfortable with the whole issue when he was talking about it. So I mean, it was a little bit of an awkward moment. So I think that he had gotten it appeared that he'd gotten some feedback, shall we say. And he certainly did not accuse any particular superintendent of starting a rumor or anything like that. He just said that there was a rumor and that he had never said that, that remote learners could not participate. And you're right, he didn't
That is
literally
true.
say that. He
Say
just said it was unlikely, right?
That's
But
true.
he was definitely walking back whatever he
I am
had
definitely
said.
not contradicting him. I think that what we said was exactly what he said, and it is not yet decided. And that is
But I'll be
All right.
glad to get that information. That's good.
Any other comments? Okay. I think just one more thing I want to say is I know there are people in town that are really looking forward to getting us back into Simmons Lecture Hall. And as I preface this meeting, we're still in a state of emergency. And Governor Baker, everybody's meeting on Zoom because being close together, we're not afraid to go back. It's just, this actually is nicer because we get a lot of feedback from the community. Whereas if we were live in the Simmons Lecture Hall or wherever, I don't think we could have any participants. So I think we'll look at in the future towards maybe a hybrid model of our school committee meetings where some of us are on Zoom and some of us are in person. So it's just like school. It's a plan of action. And, we're all just volunteers here. We run as elected officials and that's it. I mean, we do what we love. All right, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, not sorry. I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Star
O'Neill-
second.
oh,
All right,
Beat
all
ya.
those in favor.
O'Neill, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you, everybody. See you next Thursday.
All right, good
And
night.
before. All our meetings.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Have a good weekend.